Pennsylvania is old. Really old, by American standards anyway. It was one of the first colonies, one of the first states. And with that age comes layer upon layer of history, folklore, tragedy, and just plain weirdness that nobody has managed to fully explain. This is a state where the government has covered up crash sites, where hills make cars roll upward, where a Victorian asylum left behind things that refuse to be explained away, where a forest has been burning underground for over 60 years and no one has stopped it. Pennsylvania doesn't run out of mysteries. It just accumulates more of them. These are the 13 mysterious places in Pennsylvania no one can explain. Place 13 Centralia, a town the earth is slowly swallowing alive. Centralia sits in Columbia County in the anthracite coal belt of eastern Pennsylvania. In 1962, a fire was lit in an abandoned coal mine beneath the town, likely to clean up a landfill before Memorial Day. The fire never went out. It has been burning underground for over 60 years. The coal seams beneath. Centralia run deep and wide, and the fire follows them. Steam vents push up through cracked asphalt. The ground is warm to the touch in certain spots. Carbon monoxide levels in the soil have been measured at lethal concentrations. The state and federal government spent decades and tens of millions of dollars trying to extinguish it. None of it worked. By the 1980s, residents were being relocated. Today, fewer than 5 people still live in Centralia. The streets are there. You can see the grid, the curbs, the old driveways leading to empty lots. The church still stands. The fire is still burning. No one knows when it will stop. Estimates range from decades to centuries. Place 12 Gettysburg, where the dead never seem to leave. Gettysburg, Adams County, was the site of the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. Over 3 days in July of 1863, approximately 51,000 men were killed, wounded, or went missing on this ground. The battlefield is now a national military park, and it is, by almost any measure, one of the most reported upon locations in the United States when it comes to unexplained phenomena. Visitors and park rangers alike have documented strange lights moving across the fields after dark, orbs that don't correspond to any light source. Thermal imaging equipment used by researchers has captured heat signatures in areas where no living person was standing. Photographs taken on the battlefield routinely come back with anomalies, shapes in the tree line, figures on ridges that weren't visible at the time of shooting. The official explanation for all of it is atmospheric refraction, camera artifacts, and overactive imagination. The volume and consistency of the reports, going back to the 1860s themselves, makes that explanation difficult to fully accept. Place 11 Pennhurst Asylum, a place that manufactured suffering for decades. Pennhurst State School and Hospital opened in Chester County in 1908, built to house people with mental and physical disabilities. It was overcrowded almost immediately. By mid-century, thousands of patients lived in conditions a 1968 television investigation described as a human dungeon. Residents warehoused in caged cribs, left unclothed, neglected on a scale that shocked the country. Pennhurst was shut down in 1987 following years of lawsuits and exposés. The buildings were left standing. What visitors and urban explorers report today goes beyond the expected discomfort of a derelict building. Voices in empty corridors. Doors that move without airflow. Cell 17 in the Quaker Building, where a particular patient was confined for years in isolation, has a handprint on the wall that maintenance crews have reportedly painted over multiple times. It keeps reappearing. The rational explanation is moisture seeping through old plaster. The handprint keeps coming back regardless. Place 10 Kecksburg, the town that saw something fall. On December 9, 1965, residents across multiple U.S. states and Canada reported a large fireball crossing the sky. It slowed. It made a controlled descent. It came down in the woods outside the small town of Kecksburg in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. The official explanation? A meteor. Except witnesses on the ground described something different. A metallic, acorn-shaped object, roughly the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, partially buried in the ground in the woods, with markings along its base that one witness described as resembling Egyptian hieroglyphs. The U.S. Army arrived within hours and cordoned off the area. Locals who had approached the object were turned back. By morning, whatever was in those woods was gone, loaded onto a flatbed truck and driven away. NASA investigated the incident in 2003 under a Freedom of Information request. The files associated with the case were found to be missing. The official explanation remains a meteor. Place 9 Gravity Hill, New Paris, where physics seems to stop working. On a rural road outside New Paris in Bedford County, there is a hill that behaves incorrectly. Cars placed in neutral at the base of the slope roll upward, visibly, measurably against the incline. Balls roll uphill. Water poured on the road flows the wrong direction. The scientific explanation is well established. It is an optical illusion created by the surrounding landscape, which tilts the visual horizon in a way that makes a downhill slope appear to go up. The eye is deceived by the terrain. The car is rolling downhill. It only looks like uphill. That explanation is correct. And yet, sitting in a car in neutral, watching it roll in the direction it should not be rolling, the explanation does nothing to make the experience feel less wrong. Gravity Hill has been documented since at least the early 20th century. It is not unique to Pennsylvania. There are similar sites across the country. But Gravity Hill in Bedford County remains one of the most visited and most disorienting. Place 8 Hexenkopf Rock, Williams Township. A boulder with a name that means witch's head. Hexenkopf Rock is a large outcropping in Northampton County that has been a site of folklore, ritual, and documented strange occurrences since at least the 18th century. The Pennsylvania Dutch settlers who named it believed the rock was a gathering, point for dark spiritual forces, a location where the boundary between the physical world and something else was thin. Reports associated with Hexenkopf span centuries. Livestock found dead near the base of the rock with no explanation. Compasses that behave erratically in its vicinity. A persistent electromagnetic anomaly that researchers have measured but not explained. The rock itself sits on private land. It is not accessible to the public, which may explain why it has remained largely unexplained. Place 7, the Broad Top Coal Region, Huntingdon County, where entire towns vanished and left no record. The Broad Top is a plateau in south-central Pennsylvania that was heavily mined for coal throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. At its peak, dozens of company towns dotted the plateau. Thousands of people lived and worked here. Then the coal ran out. The companies left. The people left. The towns were not formally abandoned. They were simply never maintained. Structures collapsed into the hillsides. Roads were reclaimed by forest. No historical marker recorded most of them. No census tracked their dissolution. Today, ruins emerge from the woods without explanation or context. Foundations, chimneys, mineshaft openings, an entire collapsed landscape of human habitation that has been quietly erased. Local historians have spent decades trying to document what existed here. The record remains incomplete. Places 6 through 1, the final 6. Visual cue, map pins drop across Pennsylvania with atmospheric aerial shots. 6. Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia, a solitary confinement prison that opened in 1829 and pioneered a form of isolation so severe that Charles Dickens called it cruel and wrong, closed in 1971. The cell blocks are open as a museum, and the building's own staff have logged unexplained footsteps, shadowy figures, and voices in areas confirmed to be empty. Al Capone was held here. His cell, by multiple accounts, was the most disturbing to spend time in. Pine Barrens of New Jersey border region, Burlington County, the edge of Pennsylvania's pine forest, where the Jersey Devil folklore originates, bleeds across the state line. The interior of this region contains documented areas where radio signals fail, GPS becomes unreliable, and the silence is described by visitors as absolute in a way that feels wrong for a living forest. Ringing Rocks Park, Upper Black Eddy, a field of boulders in Bucks County that ring like bells when struck with a hammer. Not all of them. Roughly 30% of the rocks in the field produce a clear metallic tone. The remaining 70% produce a normal, dull impact. Scientists have studied the phenomenon. The leading theory involves internal stress in the rock from glacial deposition. The phenomenon has not been fully reproduced in laboratory conditions. Frick's Lock, Chester County, a ghost town on the banks of the Schuylkill River. Abandoned in the 1970s when the adjacent nuclear power plant bought out residents. The homes and church still stand intact behind a fence. The village looks as though everyone left in the middle of an ordinary day. Nothing has been demolished. Nothing has been reclaimed. Mishler Theater, Altoona, a 1906 opera house in Blair County, where the original owner, Isaac Mishler reportedly still occupies his private box on the right side of the mezzanine. Staff members have reported seeing a figure seated in the box during dark hours. The seat is the only one in the house that is never found in the up position in the morning, regardless of whether the house was empty the night.